Hello and welcome to Farm Connections. I'm your host, Dan Hoffman. On today's episode, we visit Janet Bremer, farm blogger and co-owner of the Bremer Dairy Farm. We talk about safety with Nick Schiltz and Kate Harrington. David Nicolai presents our newest best practice. We have a new focus on forage, and Lynn Ketelsen updates us on the current state of the pork industry. All here today on Farm Connections.
Welcome to Farm Connections with your host, Dan Hoffman.
Farm Connections made possible in part by
Elkhorn Clean Fuel, a farmer-owned renewable energy producer in Claremont, Minnesota for more than 20 years, producing ethanol, high-protein livestock feed, and corn oil for resale to benefit its members and their communities. Absolute Energy, a locally owned facility, produces 115 million gallons of ethanol annually, proudly supporting local economies in Iowa and Minnesota. Absolute Energy, adding value to the neighborhood.
Back in 1944, Sam Bauer had a vision to provide tires and heating oil to families. This second and third generation family-run business is still focused on commercial truck, retread tires, tires for your passenger vehicles, and farm equipment too.
Novel Energy Solutions, committed to working with farmers and landowners to deliver a new crop, electricity. More about income potential and lease agreements designed to be top performers at novelenergy.biz.
Welcome to Farm Connections. We're on a dairy farm near Hastings, Minnesota with the co-owner, Janet Bremer. Welcome to Farm Connections.
Thank you. Glad you could come.
Well, we're thrilled to be here. What a beautiful day.
Yes, it is. No rain, which is exciting.
Well, that's helpful. And I understand you're trying to put up forage for the dairy animals and you're having a little challenge.
Yes, we are having a little challenge. It seems like every time we think we're going to get a nice day, we get rain. So we have a little bit of a problem there. We right now have hay cut down in the field, just waiting for a good day.
Well, why does it matter if you have quality feed for your animals?
Well, we only feed our animals quality feed. And the only way we can get quality feed is if we can put it up in a timely manner. We grow everything that our animals are fed, so it's especially important. Good, healthy cows make good, healthy milk, and that's our goal.
A great goal. And from my experience, quality people, quality feed, quality animals, quality milk.
Absolutely right. Thank you for that.
Well, how long have you been dairy farming?
My husband and I, John, have been married for 36 years, but I also grew up on a dairy farm. I'm actually a sixth generation dairy farmer. When I was growing up, my grandparents were farmers, and I have 6 uncles, and they were all also dairy farmers. So it's kind of in my blood. And John is at least a 5th generation dairy farmer.
We're in the Hastings area, but your farm was a little closer to the Twin Cities or north of here?
Yeah, in Cottage Grove. So we, right now on our farm, we're only about 15-20 minutes from downtown St. Paul. So we're very close to the metro area.
And that's unique.
Oh my goodness.
It gives some special challenges, but also some special rewards.
It does. We love being close to the metro. We like to take advantage of things that are happening in the cities, but that also does deter us from ever growing to be a larger farm, even if we chose to, because there just isn't the land available here.
When you have a beautiful golf course right across the road, I mean directly north of where we're standing.
Yes, we do. Like 300 feet from our front door, we have Emerald Greens Golf Course, a 36-hole golf course. Nice neighbors, quiet neighbors, seasonal neighbors.
Do you ever have the chance to help teach them or put educational presentations on so they learn about what a dairy is?
We don't do it at the golf course. They actually were farmers before they opened their golf course, but I do a lot of educational programs here on the farm. Mm-hmm. We have a lot of farm tours. We have dairy nutritionists. We also have a partnership with Dakota County Technical College, where they will bring out their vet tech students, and they actually then get the opportunity to work on our calves. So we do a lot of teaching here, as well as I do a lot of teaching. I do a lot of school visits, and I do an awful lot of social media.
Well, fantastic. Why is it important to have education outreach? I mean, you could shut yourself off from the world and just raise your animals and produce milk.
Oh, we don't want to do that.
Why are you doing this?
We don't want to do that because I want the eaters of the world to hear the story from us, the farmers. There's too much misinformation out there, whether it's online or social media, or just hearing it maybe secondhand or thirdhand from somebody else that maybe didn't catch every detail just perfectly. I want people to come to the farmer. Think about it. If you have an animal that's sick, you go to the veterinarian. If your car isn't working, you go to the mechanic. So why wouldn't you go to the farmer to get information about what you're eating?
And you, of course, live and work here. So I oftentimes hear people say, well, they sell us something different than they eat. Can you elaborate on that?
No, that is not true. We shop for our milk just like everybody else. So it's important to me what I'm putting in my family's mouth, and it's the same as for anybody else. I want it to be a good product because I'm drinking it too.
We noticed the milk truck come in, and of course they need to collect the milk and take it to processing for testing, pasteurizing, and then distribution. That's your paycheck, right?
Absolutely, that's our paycheck. Yep, that is our only source of income is our milk check. And if we sell some occasional animals or sell some excess feed. But the bulk of our income comes from the milk check, which has been a little lean lately. And I'm sure you'll hear that from a lot of dairy farmers. They're just, the milk price is very low right now. So unfortunately, a lot of dairy farmers are going out of the business because of that, because they just can't make ends meet.
Well, to that fact, Janet, in 2018 we lost 600 dairy farmers in Wisconsin alone. And so, of course, when you take out that many, it leaves some pressure on the remaining few and the entire industry. Thoughts on what we can do to reverse that?
That's a tough question. I would like to say there's a simple answer, but I don't know of a simple answer. Number one, I think we need to get the milk price increased, and that is only going to increase if we increase consumption. That's going to be a huge help. So obviously I encourage everybody to get in their 3 servings a day. Other than that, I think we need to encourage young people to get into dairy farming. The average age for dairy farmers right now in Minnesota or across the United States is actually 56 years old. So we need to get more and more people interested in farming in order to keep those numbers up for dairy farms. The problem being, if a young person doesn't see that they're going to make money, then how do we encourage them? So it does kind of all boil down to that paycheck.
Very good point. If we can't cover the cost of production, you're actually funding the business, and that's really not fair to you as a hardworking person.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's still, it's a livelihood that we love, and we have no intentions of leaving, but I know a lot of people have to leave because it just gets to the point where they can't pay the bills, and I understand that. Or it's just stressful, because that's another big issue right now, is just the psychological and the emotional. Thinking about it, like I said, I'm a 6th-generation dairy farm. Imagine if I was the generation after 6 years of my hardworking ancestors, if I was the one that lost the farm.
Yeah. You've also done some things with Midwest Dairy Association, I believe,
yes.
and on the Dairy Princesses. And you talked about we need to build demand.
Absolutely.
Tell us a little bit about your work in that world.
Sure. Midwest Dairy is actually employs me to be in charge of the Minnesota Dairy Princess program. So it's the county dairy princesses, the county ambassadors, as well as Princess K of the Milky Way. So I do several different things for that organization. The first thing that I do is every May we have a competition with all the county princesses that want to run for Princess K of the Milky Way. It's a leadership weekend. So we will have speakers on topics related to dairy, but also related to just things in their future, development as far as leadership skills and whatnot. And then at the end of that weekend, we've chosen our 10 finalists for Princess K of the Milky Way. And then in July, just in next week, we'll be having an orientation for those 10 finalists to give them some additional information and prepare them for the state fair. And then in August is when we actually have the judging for Princess K of the Milky Way, and the night before the state fair, she's crowned. And then I get the lucky fortune of being the one to chaperone the girls at the state fair. So I'm actually living up at the state fair with those gals for the 12 days of the fair, and I love it. Some people think I'm nuts, but I love it.
Well, 12 days is a huge commitment, especially with the amount of work you have here. So thank you.
Yeah, well, thank my family, because they're the ones that cover for me while I'm gone. And then the remainder of the year, I'm the one that schedules Princess Kay for her visits, and I'm also the one that edits her print work and also edits her speeches. So it's a year-round position that I have.
Well, you're doing a great job. And of
Thank
course,
you.
This very show interviewed the very first Princess Kay the Milky Way, Ellie
I
Thatcher.
heard that, yes.
And she did a great job. And of course, she was telling some of the opportunities and the doors that had opened for her, traveling around the world to Paris, and also meeting, for example, at that time it was Hubert Humphrey.
Mm-hmm.
So I heard you say leadership development. Why is that important inside of the dairy industry?
Well, I mean, I would love to say that all these girls are going to someday have a career in dairy, but I know that isn't the case, and that's fine because everybody has different interests and different skills. But that way we can get them to be a wonderful dairy advocate when they're that 18 to 24 age range, but also give them skills that they can use not only in our program, but in life after that. So.
Well, great point. And as we referenced when the milk hauler came in the driveway, it's a team. And when we think about the dairy farm, there's probably no other kind of farm that employs as many people in the industry.
Yes.
I don't know exactly the ratio, but there's many people, the veterinarian, the electrician, the plumber, the agronomist, the
Yes.
field tech for the dairy supply company, the milk hauler. The list goes on and on. So you employ a lot of people. Those Princess Kays or those dairy ambassadors will probably find something inside of that industry as well.
Very likely, yes. There's a lot of different industries and a lot of different jobs involved in farming, and I always say I challenge you to go a day without agriculture because you're affected some way or another.
Janet, speaking of challenge, what is the biggest challenge you and your industry face at this time?
Okay, I think the number one challenge we've already touched on, and that's the low milk price. But the other challenge that we have is just the misinformation that people get about farming and their food and food production and animal care. I decided to just take that on as a challenge myself, and I'm very active in social media. 7 years ago, Midwest Dairy invited dairy farmers to go to Kansas City for a training on how to effectively use social media. And at that time, my blog was born. And my blog is called mybarnyardview.blogspot.com. And I talk about what we do here on our dairy farm. Nothing fancy, just our day-to-day things that happen on the farm. And I call it my news, moos, and reviews about life on a dairy farm. And I hopefully get to answer a lot of questions and hopefully correct some misconceptions. And after my blog was born, then I went on to Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and now I do it all. And I enjoy it, and I enjoy the conversation. A lot of people are willing to ask a question on social media that they maybe wouldn't have the opportunity to ask otherwise.
Well, you are certainly connected and high-tech.
Well, thanks to my children.
Janet, beyond that, we're missing a lot of trust in this world. And you bring that. You're a dairy farm owner, co-owner, spouse of a dairy farmer, 6th generation dairy farmer, raised children, taught school. Who could be more trusted than that?
That's what I like to believe. I mean, I'm transparent. I'll answer anything, I'll talk about anything because I want people to know that I care. Because like I said earlier, I'm not just preparing dairy foods for their family, I'm preparing them for my family too. So it's important to me as well.
This has been fantastic. Thank you, Janet.
Yes, thanks for coming.
Oh, it's our treat. A trusted source, the farmer near Hastings, Janet Bremer at her dairy farm. Thanks for tuning in. Stay tuned for even more Farm Connections.
Farm Connections Best Practices brought to you by
Hello, I'm David Nicolai with the University of Minnesota Extension. In today's Best Practice segment, I'm going to talk about Palmer amaranth. Palmer amaranth is a highly invasive weed that has been found recently in the state of Minnesota in at least 6 counties. This particular weed is very competitive for both corn and soybeans. The reason it is competitive is for the fact that it has a very fast growth rate, up to 2 to 3 inches in a day. It can produce up to 500,000 seeds, and grow up to 6 feet in height. In addition, Palmer amaranth is a weed that is difficult to manage with some traditional herbicides, particularly if we think about glyphosate, Roundup, and Touchdown, oftentimes are not effective. The management for most growers would consist of using a pre-emergence herbicide, maybe a contact herbicide such as Liberty and other types of situations with that particular weed species. But again, management would dictate first that growers consider where it is in the fields and what they can do to eradicate it so it does not become a problem. In the southern states, it has been found where it is endemic that it is highly invasive, has caused traditionally a lot of yield reduction in both corn and soybeans, and therefore it has become much more difficult for the control of this particular weed. Palmer amaranth, in addition to being a fast-growing weed, is a very much of a weed that has considered the difficulty with the standpoint of producing a lot of seed, and it has been found to be a contaminant in seed mix when we're talking about pollinator seed mix that has been planted for pollinator fields and situations around field edges and in conservation tillage areas. But also it has been recently of concern in some counties because it has been found in livestock manure, and we believe that it has been a contaminant that has been found in areas of screenings of feed for cattle and accidentally spread back into farmers' fields. Because of this seriousness, we are concerned that farmers identify it properly, perhaps look for those long petioles on the plant itself. That's a tip-off and one that you might be confusing it with other weeds such as redwood pigweed or water hemp. I just would like to mention the steps that were involved, and we recommend from the Minnesota Department of Agriculture and Extension that if farmers find it, what they need to be able to do to report it. Number 1 is record the location. Number 2, call their University of Minnesota Extension or their crop consultant or the Minnesota Department of Ag at 888-545-6684 to report those locations. Collect the plant samples and refrigerate those, and then to keep people and equipment off of those particular sites if that's provided. That's today's best practice segment. With the University of Minnesota Extension, I'm Dave Nicolai.
Welcome to Farm Connections, and with me today are two special guests. On my immediate left, Nick Schiltz.
Morning,
Welcome,
Dan.
Nick. And Kate Harrington.
Welcome. Thank you.
So happy you're here. Nick, what's your day job?
I'm an ag instructor at Harrington Community College.
Kate?
And I am the interim program coordinator for Mower County 4-H.
Both important jobs, and of course, especially in southern Minnesota, but all over our state, agriculture is extremely important and sometimes even dangerous. Nick, you are moving forward a program called Progressive Ag Safety Day. Tell us how that idea started and how far you've come with that concept.
This area is very bountiful in agriculture. This area has a lot of heritage and aesthetics that make agriculture at the forefront of our industry, and certainly within our economy. A lot of times, though, a lot of young people are exposed to agriculture, asked to perform tasks that which may be unregulated, may be hazardous. They may not see the inherent dangers or risks of those activities. About 16 to 17% of workers within 100,000 ag workers die each year due to farm accidents, farm hazards. So certainly on that farm setting, the hazards are much more prevalent than those in a residential area.
Wow, Nick. I went from thinking how fortunate we are to have farm families and how wonderful and scenic those farms are and how we have nutritious food, fuel, fiber, and other things that come from the farm, to all of a sudden realizing it's a very hazardous place. What makes it hazardous?
It's very hazardous because the workplace requirements and rules may not be as apparent as those in more of an industrial setting. Okay, there may not be as much regulation or much instruction to otherwise you would get more so on the job working in a factory or within a business. And certainly a lot of those farm workers are a lot of young people as well too. They're not of the age where they can see the immediate imminent risks of some of those farm tasks.
Kate, can you add a little more to that conversation?
Well, I think it's important, especially from a 4-H and youth development standpoint. With 4-H and being so ingrained in youth development, this is why it's good to partner with Riverland and Progressive Ag Safety Day, is to bring awareness and to give the hands-on learning to youth to recognize those dangers that are possible in a farm setting.
And sometimes the long-term effects of being around dust inside of confined buildings and those things contribute to chronic illnesses, but largely you're talking more about acute things like accidents in this camp, or are you talking about all of those things?
This is a program designed to expose students to how they remain safe around situations involving fire, or first aid, working with tractors, working with chemicals, working around grain bins and PTOs. So many of those same hazards which they would find in a farm setting, they'll encounter and hear from our professionals locally to teach them how to be safe.
You'll have police, professional firefighters, all teaching children a little bit about fire safety and public safety.
That's right, yep, absolutely. Hearing it from the professionals themselves and guiding through students through what would you do in a situation? What would you do? How would you handle this situation? And showing them by using those interactive tools on how to appropriately engage and remain safe and calm on those situations.
Nice. The response is important. And if the response is a reaction and it's not done well, we might actually have more injuries or more death.
Right. If we can prevent one farm accident because of this safety day, our time is justified.
Great advice from both of you. And as I think about it, one thing that comes to mind that our public viewing audience can really help with is, as they're moving down the roadways and they see machines and farmers traversing across our landscape to get to their farms and fields, to slow down.
Right.
Give them space. Those machines are huge, they don't move necessarily fast, and they're tough for the operator to see around. So give them plenty of space and anticipate they're going to stop, start, and turn.
Right. And even by slowing down for just a few minutes and following that machine, it certainly saves you plenty of time in terms of pulling out into the roadway and creating a hazard.
Great advice, Nick. Thank you.
Dan.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you.
Stay tuned for more on Farm Connections.
My name is Grace Erickson and I'm from the Alden 4-H Club, and this is Steve, my dairy steer. I am inspired by everything around me, agriculture. We live on a farm and it's been in my blood since forever. I have been the dairy steer showmanship I've been the champion for 4 years in a row. Last year I went to State Fair and I was the reserve champion up at State Fair. I have gotten rated gain a couple years, and a couple years ago I was the master beef producer for junior. Daily I will feed them, and then in the morning I will come out and wash them, give them a little rinse, cool them down a little bit so then they eat more. And then sometimes we will walk them just to get them kind of active every day, and then we'll use a show stick we try to do it every day just to get them a little bit used to it. 4-H has taught me a lot. It's taught me hard work and just how to accomplish things and how good it feels when you achieve your goals. The animals are really well cared for. We wash them every day. They get the best feed they can. They get a lot of love, and they're pretty good. Head, I use the 4 aspects of 4-H a lot with my dairy steers. Head, it teaches you a lot. It teaches you hard work and everything else. Heart, it teaches you how to love. You work with them all summer and you kind of learn to love them a lot. And health, it keeps you really active. Your one arm is pretty strong from holding them on for a long time. Health, you stay pretty healthy. You're outside all the time. Grace Erickson, and showing dairy steers is my favorite thing to do and probably the best part of my summer.
The pork industry in the United States received some badly needed relief with the lifting of the tariffs on pork moving into Mexico. However, pork producers and a record number of farm organizations have joined together to encourage Congress to ratify the U.S.-Canada-Mexico trade agreement very soon. They say this would be a long-term solution. Dave Preisler is the CEO of Minnesota Pork.
It's really almost a record-breaking number of agricultural and business groups that all went together to sign on to this letter to send to not only the president but also our congressional delegation to get moving. And that's really kind of the message of it, is that we need to have some urgency that goes to getting to a new USMCA agreement. Hopefully we can get them to take action, either whether it's later this summer or into this fall, but it's time to get moving with that agreement.
Another major concern worldwide is the impact African swine fever is having in China and other parts of Asia. The Minnesota Pork CEO says they're watching it very closely.
This is not a human health issue whatsoever. This is a disease that's specific to pigs, doesn't affect any other animal, doesn't affect food safety. But no, nothing in the United States, and we've been engaged here for several months with folks in Washington, D.C., even on a state level, on prevention efforts. And just to do anything and everything we can from a prevention standpoint. That's really has to be job one.
Keeping African swine fever out of the U.S. is critical, says Preisler. The economic impact could be enormous.
We're also working on preparation in case it did get here. But boy, we hope we would never have to use those plans, because it would just be so expensive. It would be really devastating to rural communities, and devastating obviously to the farmers themselves and to our state's economy. If we look at just the impact here in Minnesota, if we broke, conservatively we would be at least $1 billion a year.
There are a lot of questions facing the pork industry right now, no doubt about that, but one thing is for certain. Pork producers, pork production is critical to Minnesota and American agriculture. This is Lynn Ketelsen reporting.
Staying informed is vitally important in our increasingly busy day-to-day lives. Taking a moment to slow down and assess where we are and what we are doing helps to keep us grounded and moving forward. I'm Dan Hoffman. Thanks for watching Farm Connections.